Hi everyone, I'm Eric.
And I'm Christopher.
And we're Grow For Me Gardening. Today we're taking you on part 1 of our July garden tour. Welcome to our garden here in upstate New York, zone 5B/6A. We are so excited to have you in our garden. We're going to take you on a tour through the entire thing, and this is part 1 of 2 parts. We had quite an exciting weekend here in our garden. Starting on Friday, we had Gardener's Supply come and do some photo shoots for their upcoming catalog. That's pretty awesome. And then the second exciting thing we had happen this weekend was our Open Days garden tour, where we got to meet so many awesome gardeners, talk plants, and have a lot of fun and lots of laughs. But we also wanted to show you what's going on in our garden in July. And let's start right up front here with our Invincible Wee White hydrangeas. Now look at this grouping of 6 hydrangeas. This is full grown. This is what they do. They're a smooth leaf hydrangea that blooms on new wood. They are in full sun. This year they did suffer a little sun scorch because we had that tremendous heat dome. But that's the first time that's happened. Normally the blooms are looking fresh and crisp like these new blooms that this plant has put out. All of these get overhead water from the lawn sprinklers, and they do very well, I think, for getting overhead water only. What do you think, Christopher?
I think they look fantastic, and you can see there's that little tinge of blush on some of the new blooms. They will rebloom quite nicely through the summer.
It's true. In here too, we have 3 evergreens. They are winter gem boxwoods. They're probably in need of a little bit of trim, but I don't mind when the boxwoods get a little woolly. I think it's kind of fun and a little whimsical.
I like them.
Yeah, they add a nice little weight in here. You'll also see a perennial that we repeat constantly throughout the garden. This is Walker's Low Catmint, and this is its second flush of blooms. They've already had a full, tremendous flowering in early June, and they've been cut back all the way to the ground, and this is their second flush. And you are going to see it everywhere throughout our garden because it is one of our go-to favorite perennials is catmint. Also in this bed is this gorgeous quartet of birch trees. And I want to say this is Jack Mantii, right, Christopher?
This is the Heritage River Birch.
This is a Heritage River Birch. And this was planted maybe the year before last. Originally, we had an ornamental pear tree in here. One of those ones that isn't really good for the environment and gets to whatever. It quickly got diseased and we had to remove it. So we replaced it with this tree, which is doing much better.
I think it looks great. And apparently the difference between Heritage River Birch and a regular species river birch is simply that this one is going to get darker colors underneath as it peels on the bark.
It's really pretty. But come on up this way. I want to share our containers with you. Right here, flanking our garage doors, we have 2 garage doors, so we have 3 planters. These are the Urbino planters from Campagna International in Nero Nuevo, which is their Italian way of saying black. And then in them, we have these awesome obelisks, which I love how they add that structure to them. Center is Rise Up Lilac Days Roses from Proven Winners. The scent is incredible.
Really lovely, like true old rose fragrance.
And what's really nice about them is they open up so wide that the pollinators can really get in there and enjoy the pollen. They're underplanted with Superbenia Sparkling Amethyst, Supertunia Saffron Finch, Luscious Royale Pina Colada Lantana, and Supertunia Mini Vista Indigo. And this is repeated all the way throughout. A lot of people ask us if we're going to keep the roses in the container for the winter, and the honest answer is we don't know. I think we're going to try, probably, right?
I honestly think that based on them saying we're a zone 6, if these are a zone 4 plant, we should technically be able to leave them in the container.
We should, but I also think like these are black and they're very thick, so they'll absorb that winter sun. This faces directly south. They would absorb that winter sun all day long, which would then keep the roots kind of warm overnight. I think they should be fine. My only concern would be them like overgrowing or outgrowing these containers, and then we would have these giant roses around the garage doors, but I also think that might not be bad.
It could be really fun.
Come on over here. We do have some nice stone gravel leading up to our front door just for aesthetic purposes and a little bit of drainage. Winter gem boxwood adds that nice weight and structure as you're heading up to the front door.
This one might be a little too woolly.
By our lamppost here, in another container from Campania International, this is the Luca planter. This is a Hollywood hibiscus, and it is called, Christopher?
America's Sweetheart.
America's Sweetheart. And so this is something new that Proven Winners has added to their line. It is not something that's hardy in our zone, so I'm not quite sure yet what we're going to do with it over the winter, but what this hibiscus is known for is holding its flowers for 3 days as opposed to just one like the perennial hibiscus. Next to me here is the blue kazoo spirea. You can see some of the faded flowers on it. Normally it flowers a bright white. They fade away and another flush of growth will come out, and those, some more white flowers will come, but not as abundant as that first flush. Right here to soften the front corner of our house, we added a columnar Hetzi juniper. It is an evergreen that stays just like this all season. I have shaped it a little more narrow as time goes. I love the fact that it produces the berries because that's a whole nother layer of textures. The berries right now are this beautiful gray-green, but they're going to turn a gorgeous, like, sea serpent blue as they age. And I crush them and they kind of smell like gin to me because they are juniper berries. And, I happen to be a gin fan. But
he likes the gin.
But come on up this way. Our head planters are planted with pink Chablis lamium. I just thought that'd be fun. It looks like a little bit of a wild hairdo.
It's a little hairdo-esque. I appreciate that.
And then we have the smaller version of the obelisks, and these are planted with shade plants, and we struggle in here to get shade plants to really thrive because it's deep shade. The only time it really gets sun is when the sun is perfectly aligned south, so it is, I'm talking less than an hour of sun in here.
And even then, you can see the sun line right at Eric's feet. That will move across as the day goes on, but they will never get any direct sun.
It is like bare minimum sunlight in here. So we've thought of a couple of things, like we do have a bulb up there that we could put some sort of grow light in, but we'd have to leave it on all the time. But this right here is Newly Noir Coleus. This is more lamium. This is a new Coleus from Proven Winners called Mini Me Chartreuse. And then there's a little begonia in here. So they're not thriving, but they're not dead yet.
Not dead yet. And I think that might be one of the only excuses for getting faux evergreens would be to put an evergreen in there.
And so, Christopher, if you go around front, I'll stand right here for just a moment. Underneath the window, you can see that we've continued those winter gem boxwoods. We planted those probably 5 years ago, and they were little 3 gallons. So they've grown pretty fast for us. Layered in front of that is a new hedge planted last fall of 2023, of Invincible Spirit 2 hydrangeas. They were probably 2 or 3 gallons when planted. So they're getting acclimated. They probably got a little bit burned this year as well because of the heat dome that we had, but they are doing what we want them to do. Next year, they will be twice as full as they are this year. In front of that are Firelight Tidbit hydrangeas, and these are a nice small panicle hydrangea. They bloom on new wood, just like Invincible Spirit 2. Later in the season, you can see they're all budded up. Some flowers are even opening. So what I like about this is, in the winter, when all this herbaceous stuff has died back, we'll have that evergreen layer. And then in spring, we're getting those smooth leaf hydrangeas that are going to bloom beautiful pink in early spring. And then as the summer comes, we're getting these panicle hydrangea blooms. And then we have this layer of annuals in front, the blue floss flower ageratum hybrid. And it's called Artist Blue is the name, and it is a Proven Winners annual. And this hedge is on drip, and I really think it's thriving this year.
It's got a nice sparkle to it. It really catches the eye.
Another winter gem boxwood, so it kind of connects all the way throughout the bed, adding winter interest. And it also helps with the transition to the Vanessa Bell Rose hedge, which is underplanting the tricolor beech. And you can see here the Walker's Low catmint that kind of caps off this corner, and it's going into its second flush of nice big poofy purple blooms. And let's head, Christopher, we're going to back up down here, if you don't mind, and just kind of work our way back again.
I don't mind at all.
To my left is going to be, this is a vanilla strawberry hydrangea. It's a panicle hydrangea. This has been here about 6 years. This is its 6th summer in the ground. I love this hydrangea because it has the nice dark stems, the healthy green foliage, and it does have nice big blooms. Underplanted with Bidens. This is an annual from Proven Winners. I know, what is the actual name?
It's Campfire Marshmallow.
Campfire Marshmallow.
And I will just caveat and say they look beautiful over here because they get full sun. Over here where they get a little bit less sun, not as cute.
A little smaller, huh?
I would say that Campfire Marshmallow, beautiful, successful annual in the sun.
Right here, you'll see another boxwood to carry that winter interest through. A blue kazoo spirea to tie into the blue kazoo spireas up by the front door. More of our favorite Walker's Low catmint. A nice little structure here with a clematis on it. This is, which one, Christopher?
Olympia.
Olympia clematis. Firelight tidbit hydrangea. This also pulls into the elevation bed. We wanted them to, be tied together. A columnar juniper to help add privacy and winter interest. Again, tying it into the bed over there. A gorgeous pampas grass that's going to get enormously tall before the end of the season. Spilled wine weigela to add a little purpley dark red color. And now we're kind of working on filling in this bed to separate us from our neighbor's lawn. This is a red fox katsura tree. This was just planted probably 6 weeks ago. We got this on our visit up to Gardener's Supply. It's a really nice color that's going to turn like all shades apparently in the fall. It's going to be like orange and red and yellow, and then as the leaves decompose, it'll smell like marshmallows. It's got so many great attributes.
It's an exciting tree.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how it does. Thin Man arborvitae. So you can see that these are planted pretty close together because this is going to stay much more narrow, the Thin Man arborvitae, as will this with this upright structure. But this is a Spring Grove arborvitae that's going to eventually get bigger. And so until then, we could fill in with annuals, we could fill in with perennials, but, it's how gardening is. You'll get there when you get there. And then also continuing on with kind of the green screen is this new introduction from Isley, which is actually called Green Screen Arborvitae. It's really stout. It has a lot of growth in it. It's very happy here. It's got a little bit of a bluish green undertone. It's supposed to grow, I can't remember the stats, Christopher.
It's very similar in stats to an emerald green arborvitae. It just has a slightly denser habit.
It's really nice and full. A trio of North Pole arborvitaes. We had these in our containers over the winter because we got them on clearance last fall. So we overwintered them in containers, put them out here in the spring, and they've really beefed up in the ground.
They've gotten beefy. They haven't gotten taller. They just got beef.
And then those of you who have been watching our videos for quite a while might remember these Blue Point junipers used to be the centerpiece in our front containers. Imagine if they had stayed there, how big they're getting.
Is this one season?
This is one season. We put them there last fall. They are really happy in the ground. And that brings us right over here to another Winter Gem boxwood, capping off the foundation bed and bringing us to the oak leaf.
As we start moving down the east side, we of course are greeted by the Gatsby Pink Oak Leaf Hydrangea. This has been in the ground about 5 years. It has certainly bulked out and created this great mound, actually. I would say, what is this? 6.5 feet wide, tall. It's like a kind of a perfect gumdrop shape.
Yeah, it's pretty gorgeous.
It blooms the earliest of all of our hydrangeas, and this year it's gone pink pretty early in the season, I would say. But what I'm loving is seeing all the new growth forming all of next year's buds, and they're just kind of layering on top of each other. So you have the old leaves, the new leaves, and the pink, giving us a lot of interest this time of year.
It also looks like there's been a little bit of reblooming. You can see some bright white flowers, some very small ones.
Oh, you're right.
There's about 3 of them I see from here, so
That's
it must be very happy.
It does get quite a lot of water in this location. The underplanting for this is Roseanne geranium, which you see in every garden center all over the place. I love the purple color. It is quite nice as a contrasting tone, but also look how it kind of vines up. It's like a mini climber. I feel like we should try some other hardy geraniums in other spots just to see if they'll do the same thing. I like when they kind of pop out and create that extra little color and texture. Down here, this is Aztec Gold something.
Veronica.
It is a Veronica?
It's creeping Veronica.
Creeping Veronica.
It has not crept as much as I wanted it to.
It has kind of slept. So maybe next year it'll start to expand a little bit. It's nice to have this chartreuse combo in this space. And it plays off nicely from the wintergreen, winter gem boxwood. So if we continue down here, instead of underplanting a hydrangea, we are using a hydrangea to underplant a rose. This is a Let's Dance Skyview that pretty much had died back to the ground completely. It's come back, it's already showing off its reblooming quality, giving us that nice pink. I don't know if we need to treat this with acidifier at all. I kind of like the pink in this spot.
It is nice. It complements the Gatsby pink hydrangea.
And then moving up here, we have Teasing Georgia that is giving lots of bud action. This is going to be covered in flowers soon. I'm thinking that the reason our roses are taking a little time to get their rebloom this season is because they had such a warm spring, bloomed so heavily. It's almost like they're just exhausted. So it's taken them a couple extra weeks to start putting on a new show. But that's all right. We will wait and we will love it still. This is the Superba Clematis. I just planted this year, and I find that Clematis always do terrible the first year. This one's not. It's putting out that nice deep blue, dark purpley color. Next year I'm gonna try to push the vines towards the back so then they grow through and show up in all different spots around the rows here. And the Jardin Tower, nice and sturdy, holding this thing up really well. Our next layer party is coming from the columnar Scotch pine. I think we've mentioned a couple times, we bought this when it was very small for $5 on clearance back when we were first starting gardening. And every year it gives us about 12 to 18 inches of growth. Eventually it's going to help soften our lovely expanse of brown vinyl siding.
I think it's already kind of working.
I do. I think it's given us that nice
It's doing exactly what we wanted it to do.
Below is Checkmark Trilogy Weigela. When this blooms, it gives you 3 different colors of flowers, really, really nice glowing hedge. We have cut it back pretty hard in the last couple years. This year, I really like the shape that it's taken on.
It's pretty.
And it gives a nice leaf contrast, color contrast, and then below is the Surefire Rose Begonia. Eric's not convinced on the neon quality of this plant. What are you thinking now?
I mean, I like it. I think it brings the much needed pink to bounce around this side of the garden. So I've turned a new leaf and I'm on board now.
You're surely turning a new leaf. Then again, we're moving into another combination of leaf texture and leaf color. The very shiny leaves of the Brandywine viburnum. We're waiting on the berries to start turning the blues and pinks that they will, next to Lime Ricky Smooth Hydrangea. There is a plant support in there, which you cannot see whatsoever, that's helped with at least those top blooms stay up. These mop heads are massive. They're so big. So I wouldn't blame it if the whole thing fell down with the way these things are like sponges for water. So I love that. I love the way that the chartreusey green color plays up against that really shiny color. Then there's also a cooler blue color down here with the spearmint heuchera, the Light o' Day hydrangea. Not going to give us blooms because it does die back every year and it blooms on old wood.
But I think this year we need to protect it.
We do.
Because we saw some in bloom at the Hydrangea Festival in Cape Cod, and they were beautiful. It blooms blue lace cap. And I remember reading that that's what it blooms no matter what the soil is, would be blue lace cap. So I think this year we're going to take the time and protect that hydrangea. I'm not sure how, but we happen to know the hydrangea queen, Sky Hamilton. So we are going to consult with her, and she's going to give us some tips and tricks, and we will pass them on to you.
Up here is the Hinoki cypress that we're just letting it do its thing. Could we stake it? Sure. Why? Let's just let it do its thing and see what it wants to do with itself. Right now, it's just popping out here, giving us this little evergreen texture. Again, the importance of evergreens, not just for winter interest, but also for summer interest, so that you do continue those textures when you're waiting on blooms or if you don't have any blooms. The pollarded willow is holding very nicely. There's not too much growth underneath that I have to climb in there and pull out. Below that here is a Limelight Prime hydrangea on its way to bloom. I'm looking forward to seeing that nice pop of white here. I think it's going to be really good. And before we continue in the shade, let's go back into the light. Bathsheba. Oh my goodness. This rose in particular. Eric, come in here close. Let's talk about this color. We have creamsicle orange. That's what I'm calling it. There's no other way to describe it. It looks like a creamsicle. You want to eat it with this sort of pale whitish apricot on the side. And, attacking me. Growing really nicely. Putting out a nice second flush, even though it's been planted, what, maybe 2 months?
Maybe, yeah, probably 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
And we'll just continue training this over time. I think this might look really nice with one of those new clematis that we have in the back to plant.
Oh, that's true. We do like a clematis and rose combination.
Rose and clematis, that's the cottage side of the contemporary cottage. Stay right there, Eric. I'm going to go here and into the hydrangea room. Invincible Ruby stealing the show right now here in the hydrangea room. The color's so much more intense than the Incredible Blush. But I think that combination's so nice.
It really is. I love this combination of the Invincible Sublime, the Invincible Lace, the Incredible White, the Incredible Blush, and the Invincible Ruby up front. And the Invincible Ruby is only right here in the very front because it stays pretty short. And I think that would be a nice level heading into the garden.
Oh, yeah. And they're going to fill in. These will all touch and be a full mass. Maybe not next year, but the year following, they're definitely all going to be intermingling and playing. And eventually, we're looking to see these sublimes almost as tall as the fence. So this area, whenever I think about that, I also think about how much more we have to pull this edge out because we're going to be in the hydrangea sitting on the bench. It's going to be a lot of fun to do that. But I think it's beautiful right now. It's done so nicely. And of course, the Invincible Lace covered in pollinators. I'm jealous. You're standing in the shade, Eric.
Well, this is one of our few shade spots here in the garden underneath the dappled willow. We have a montage. Is that the right word?
I like a montage.
A montage of different types of hostas. We have this gorgeous Jack of Diamonds Brunner right here up front. Look at the size of that foliage. We also have some hellebores in here. We've got Virginia in here. We have coral bells and tiarella. There's a stilby back there. Just this gorgeous mixture of shady perennials for us. This is an interesting hosta. I think it gets a little too much sun. That might be why it's bleached out a bit. What do you think?
It's normally slightly more chartreuse. That's coast to coast hosta. I do think in this case it's getting just a tad too much sun, which you can see right through the center of the pollard willow. It's just giving it a little gleam of sun.
And this willow is pollarded, as Christopher said. We did a whole video about how we accomplished that aesthetic. And it involves cutting out the branches and really kind of stripping them of any new growth until they form these pom-poms on the end. And I really like the way that looks. I think it's fun. And it adds this cool bit of structure into this side garden. After we move past the shade, we're now in a part sun area. It's going to get sun all morning until early afternoon. And again, another boxwood right here. We've switched to sprinters at this point. It's a little bit covered with flopping Invincible rubies, but it adds I feel like the evergreens add a nice way to transition an idea in your garden. So that's the point of this sprinter boxwood right here. Behind the sprinter boxwood is a small little gathering of meadow ruse, past their peak But I love this collection. Having meadow rose sprinkled throughout the garden adds that touch of tall whimsy, which I enjoy. Again, these are Invincible Ruby hydrangeas, and they're underplanted with coral bells. This is pistachio coral bell and maybe prom dress coral bell.
It is dressed up ball gown and pistachio ambrosia.
Thank you.
The names are getting a little similar on some of these.
Echoing the chartreuse, because you'll notice we love the pops of chartreuse, is the Winecraft Gold Smoke Bush. This on the tag says it grows 4 by 6. It has outgrown that. Up until this year, I've been really excited about how big it's gotten. This year is the first time I've sat in the bench in the hydrangea room and looked at it and thought, oh, we might have to prune it next spring.
It's a little bit more smoke tree. I think we have to stop calling it a smoke bush.
Yeah, so we might do some pruning on it next spring. I don't think we'll coppice it, though. I mean, we might.
We could. I feel like we could get away with bringing it down to the height of your head. Like if I have you stand next to it and I just trim right at that height, I think we'd have nice branching, nice big trunks. But yeah,
we'll see how it goes. Next to it is something we did coppice. This is the Aphrodite sweet shrub. The foliage is outstanding. The new growth it has put out is tremendous. I mean, it's almost as tall as the window cutout up there. So that's pretty neat. And it is starting to put out buds. So this is a plant that blooms on old wood and new wood. If we hadn't cut it to the ground, we would have had blooms in the spring, and then this new growth would be putting out a second flush of blooms. But we decided to size control it and do that. Again, another boxwood here, transitioning into this lamium. This is Pink Chablis lamium. Into the Invincible Spirit 2 hydrangeas, which did suffer quite a bit for the first time ever. They suffered from a giant storm we had come through, and they flopped a little bit. And that's never happened with these before, so I know the storm had to be pretty traumatic. Behind that is a standard quickfire, and it's underplanted with these hydrangeas, which is why you can't see that trunk on it. Another columnar juniper, Hetzi columnar juniper. It mirrors the ones up front. It's tying it all together, and it helps add privacy to the backyard. Underplanted with some dwarf lady's mantle, Supertunia Mini Vista Ultramarine, with one Supertunia Mini Vista Indigo snuck in there.
Oops.
I think we got those confused. And that brings us to our Gothic Arch. On each side of the Gothic Arch is a Bobo hydrangea. We keep these pretty tightly pruned. I love that like poofy texture they create, so it looks like the roses and the clematis are growing out of it. This is a Betty Corning clematis combined with a generous Gardner rose. And you can see the generous Gardner rose is budding up for its second flush.
It's ready.
It really is ready. Before I go under the arch, I just want to veer over here for a moment. Transitioning the hydrangeas into the rest of the garden, we've decided to use a Mugo pine transition. This is another evergreen and an ornamental grass. Peach berry ice coral bells. A little worse for the wear this season. I think something's up with their drip. Not quite sure what's going on there. Magic Show Ever After Veronica. Favorite color Veronica we have in our garden for sure.
Definitely.
I not only love the bloom color, but I love the foliage color. It is nice, rich green. One of the most asked about plants this weekend at the garden tour, 100% Kinsley Ghost Honeysuckle. This is the 4th season in the ground for this. When I planted it 4 years ago, it was in a quart. It was very tiny, kind of sat there. The next year it grew a little bit. Last year it grew a good chunk, but this year it's like, I am here and I am staying and I love it. Blooms yellow in the spring. It's going to start putting on berries soon. This right here is the Winecraft Black Smoke Bush that we had coppiced to the ground, and I am so glad we did because it's doing exactly what I wanted it to do with that gorgeous foliage and that nice iridescent sheen that it has to it. There's some Jacob's ladder in here, but again, another transition point we have used with Sprinter Boxwood, and that brings us under the arch.
To the side here is Banana Cream Daisy that Eric divided without me knowing, and I think that's very funny because I kept complimenting how good they looked this year, and he in fact had made it so. Behind that is a Blackhawk's blue stem grass. In this location, it usually comes out on the green side and then turns black. and reddish, which will be really nice. Behind that is a close to full bloom lavender mist thalictrum. Really tall, really happy. Here is Dark Side of the Moon astilbe, creating a little dark river effect, separating the tough stuff from the Bumble Sky Meadow Sage. I'm so happy we know the name of it now. It's a really nice plant. We originally bought 3 of them. I divided them really hard the last year, and I'm seeing them kind of take off a bit. I think they might be reseeding themselves a little bit, which I'm happy to see. We cut these back not too long ago, and now they'll come out with more of a light dusting of bloom. In this case, I like the dusting of bloom better than the full bloom, if you ask me. The Eastern Redbud, the main feature of this section, obviously. It's been limbed up a little bit this year. Eric just thinned out some branches to give it more of the whimsical look that redbuds are known for, with their heart-shaped leaves, and of course the purple flowers that come out from the branches in the springtime. What are you thinking about it this year, Eric? Are you liking it?
I'm loving it. I thought once we pruned it this past winter, I was like, oh, it looks a little out of proportion, but it has since filled in. And I think we'll keep limbing it up and pruning it as it matures, just to make sure that this area underneath it stays dappled sun.
Yeah, instead of being just a full heavy shade area. Although here we have a Gertrude Jekyll rose that has sent a cane straight up about 7 feet. It's trying to get up and out from this redbud. So I'm not sure if this is the right climber for the right spot, but that's gardening. We learn as we go. We see what exciting discoveries come our way.
And when we planted that Gertrude Jekyll, this redbud was much, much smaller.
It's really tiny. Back there is Mary Rose, which you can see is coming into much more flower, but at this time of day, close to 1, 2 o'clock, this is still in a pretty full sun location. Down here we have some lamb's ear, which I love lamb's ear. There's a couple different types we've tried. This one sends out tall bloom stalks. So we do trim the bloom stalks off so we keep that nice, cool, fuzzy look, and it plays nicely against the meadow sage, against the more glossy leaves of the James L. Austin, and it also has the nice broad leaves that contrast against the skinny, strappy leaves of the Serendipity Allium, which is just about to arrive and then be completely covered in pollinators.
I love that river of allium that swoops behind James L. Austin.
Like wraps right around there.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Really pretty. Behind is the gold cone juniper, doing exactly what we want. Beginning the east border from sort of the redbud shade area. It's a little less chartreuse this time of year than when it first comes out, and then we have that blue, yellow, red in the wine and roses weigela, and the green in all of these other leaves. So right now it's just kind of more of a neutral tone, but they're so pretty, love it. And this will begin a pattern of repetition of the lamb's ear, of the Serendipity Allium throughout the entire border, and that's underplanting Quickfire Hydrangea, Pinky Winky Hydrangea, Quickfire Hydrangea, which will be repeated on the other side of the Tromner spruce. In this case, the entire east border is really centered around this incredible hybrid tree. It's a mix of a blue spruce and a Serbian spruce. So you get the blue of the blue spruce, and Serbian spruces have more of a jagged, irregular habit, and I think it's the perfect mix to give you a formal bluish color, but a little bit more of a wild habit.
You know I love a wild habit on
He loves the wild habit. The castor beans have come into play. Those big, huge, dark leaves with striking red veins and what we like to call Muppet hairballs growing through. Their flowers are really funny looking. The seed pods are funny too. They look like, I don't know, like dragon scales.
The pollinators today are astounding. I mean, the pollinators in the garden are a dream come true.
They are a buzz. Ha 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 ha. Down here is Fall in Love Sweetly Anemone. This was 5 or 6 plants. They're not like the anemones that spread all over the place. They're kind of, they just grow into each other and create a nice mass.
They spread, but it's like a gentle spread.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. This is 3 Autumn Joy sedum. looking lovely. These, of course, are more of a late summer into fall bloomer, and it's perfect because they contrast so nicely against the Fall in Love Sweetly in terms of leaf and leaf color and form, but they have a pretty similar flower color. So that's a nice little juxtaposition there to play with. This area is brand new. And as we're moving in here, you'll see smaller specimens that will eventually fill and give a bit of the abundance of this section. This is a grouping of oh so easy peasy rose. It's a landscape rose where they take the really, really densely flowering roses and mix it with something that's healthy and robust against disease and all of that. Another example of how evergreens do the most would be Anna's Magic Ball. When I saw this in the garden center a couple years ago, I didn't think I was going to love it, but it's just this bright little glowing orb. I think it's fantastic in this spot. Up against the new Let's Dance Lovable hydrangea. This is going to be covered in flowers, 3 by 3, so a big, huge mass of really vibrant hydrangea color.
These were just planted, what, maybe beginning of June, I think,
yeah,
right?
So not too long ago.
And they were 1 gallons.
But they're doing it. They're going for it. There's a couple, this one has a little bud on it. This has a micro bud on it. So in a couple weeks, they'll probably have a little more to show for themselves. You'll notice a lot of Rockin' Play in the Blue Salvia. Again, a pollinator magnet. There's probably 40 bumblebees on it right now. We repeat this every year. It's a go-to annual because it does this from the day you plant it, and it continues doing that until the day you pull it out in October, November. Newly Noir Coleus to give us some dark pops in there. This hedge here, this is the Sweet Romance Lavender that was planted really recently, and it's blooming its little head off. I'm really impressed with this. Here on the Jensen urn with the Greenwich pedestal below, 800 pounds of, that was a fun day putting this up here. We have in there, we have the Supertunia Mini Vista Indigo, perfection. Absolutely the best Supertunia I think that has ever been or ever will be. That is intermixed with Fairy Trail Green Cascading Hydrangea. They do not rebloom, but in the beginning they were just covered in the clusters of flower. I like how they look still. I like the green texture. The Meteor Shower Verbena, which is a hybrid mini version of this Verbena bonariensis. It's very stately, just very monotone without having any other color in there.
And we deadheaded those hydrangeas only because in that heat dome they browned out a bit.
Yeah, and they were brand new. So that's the tough thing the first year you plant stuff, but that's kind of the joy of watching it mature and grow. Over here is Nosferatu Daylily. They could go for a bit of deadheading, as daylilies do, but that color is so nice. It's funny, this is the original front border here of this garden bed. So now in front of that, there's a new Thalictrum that's coming next year called Cotton Candy. They do not travel well, so we're just gonna let them do their thing. Come back next year and they'll be beautiful. The Lark Ascending Rose. When this is full size, which this is a pretty hefty David Austin rose with this apricot flower, how nice is this combination gonna be?
It's gonna be lovely.
Dark purple, apricot rose, more Serendipity Allium, more of the Autumn Joy Sedum, again pulling textures and colors throughout. These down here are more Firelight Tidbit that we're pulling from the front of the house to kind of remember how beautiful they are and how you just need to come back and see them. This is the Northwind Panicum. Massive, massive, awesome grass. I think this is the tallest it's ever been.
I think it is gorgeous.
It is absolutely gorgeous, and the plumes haven't even started yet. So when the wind is on this and it's all filled with plume, it's going to be quite the show. There's a giant stand here of blue Fortune Agastache, covered in pollinators, of course. Over here, there's a paler blue version with variegated leaves that's called Crazy Fortune. I liked that little accent of that one. And they look great underneath the lemony lace elderberry that's doing the most. This was pruned really hard in the spring, and it has fell in love with this location. It is growing, look, gangbusters right there. And right next to it, growing incredibly fast, is a Jackmontii birch clump. It's a Himalayan birch, the whitest bark you can possibly get. This eventually will be quite large and expansive over the whole area, but in the meantime, it just gives us a nice little texture fun.
And when in the wintertime, or maybe even this fall, we'll show you how we limb up our birch trees when they're young to train them to have that beautiful space underneath them to keep planting. And so they have that they create that dappled shade and they don't get too wild at the base.
Yeah, that's going to be fun to take after some of this area here. We call this the woodland corner. Some of the plants are kind of woodlandy, but for the most part, it just looks very woodlandy. It starts way in the back with the brand new from last week's Spring Grove Arborvitae. And then in layers forward, we see the light pink color in the back of Venusta, which is a prairie plant. There's the dark pink of a bee balm that is just really spreading itself around nicely. Then there is a ton of Cinderella swamp milkweed. I have seen the monarchs. They have arrived, so fingers crossed we get to see some of those. In front of this, pink lemonade, or double decadence deluxe pink lemonade baptisia. It's a long one. There's 5 of them here in a beautiful stand. And I don't know if you noticed, Eric, but one of the bee balms here that Eric's mom brought us from an all-native nursery, this white bee balm sent a shoot up in the middle.
Yeah, or reseeded itself.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just really cool. So the white one is some kind of species native white bee balm. And so that definitely gets a lot of attraction from the pollinators. Right here, as we transition over to the just starting to bloom hibiscus, is blacklight luminary phlox. Tall garden phlox. It's been blooming for weeks.
It really has.
Weeks and weeks.
One of the reasons that we sometimes avoid white flowers in the garden is because as the blooms fade, they can look a little bit like used tissues.
Yeah.
But in this case, we don't get that effect at all.
Not at all. And Eric, I don't know if you realize, this is new. A lot of these, they've tossed their spent blooms down. I actually leaf blowed them in underneath, like I was reverse vacuuming the other day. But there's a ton of new flower coming. This is like a 3-4 week white bloom. And that's in front of Icebreaker, which is a Korean fir. So another evergreen, very unique color, very unique texture, plays very well off the dark green of the phlox, even when the white's not happening. This down here, mini Mauvette hydrangea, beautiful, doing lovely in this spot. It actually does not have drip. We built it up on kind of a compost berm because it's a lower area and we didn't want it to have wet feet, but it's giving them just enough water to thrive. And then here are the 3 summerific hibiscus that will be in absolute ultra bloom in the next week or 2.
Moving this direction underneath the arch, we come upon another little bit of a shaded area, and this is created by the pagoda dogwood. This pagoda dogwood was planted in 2022, and I really like the structure of the pagoda dogwood that comes out horizontally. It's really interesting. Eventually, this bottom tier of branches will come off. This second tier right here will be the new bottom as this matures and we expand the shade area. Back there, you can see we've repeated the Gatsby pink oak leaf hydrangea. There is a rhododendron down here called Just Dandy Color Wheel, right? Dandy Man Color Wheel.
You got it.
Some lady's mantle, which has recently been deadheaded. A drinking gourd hosta. Some nice Virginia, which adds nice, bold foliage. There's also in there some ajuga to help with ground coverage. But this mass of foliage under here, these are Empress Wu hostas. And they are such a bold, big hosta. What is the mature size on this? Maybe 5 feet wide?
Oh, I think it's 6 to 8.
I mean, it's tremendous. And they get lots of water on drip. I have definitely, when I'm spraying for deer, make sure that I spray them so the deer stay away, because I can only imagine that looks delicious to a deer.
The buffet.
But in front of that is John's Dilly Alberta Spruce. This is an Isley introduction. What makes it unique are the curly needles. We just planted that this spring. I absolutely love Alberta spruces and their nice, tight, tidy structure. And that's pretty much full size.
Yeah, it's just going to be this nice little accent. I really like the way that it plays off of the redbud.
Yeah, this is another example of how when we're thinking about design in the garden, we use an evergreen for transition because it's transitioning us around the corner into another new space. This transitions us into my current favorite hedge in the garden, Invincibelle Sublime. There are 6 of them planted here in a row. I love this hydrangea. It takes full sun. It is gorgeous. It blooms on new wood. The flowers come out looking this color, this nice bright green. They fade a little bit to a richer green, and that's it. They're not going to be brown. They're not going to do anything. They're going to stay like this all season long. Then in the fall, we can just come through with some sort of hedge trimmer, cut them back, and they will be totally fine. This gorgeous floppy thing behind it, that is a weeping redbud. It's called Ruby Falls Weeping Redbud. Blooms lavender in the springtime, holds its flowers for a very extended period of time. We have 3 redbuds. This one holds its blooms the longest.
By far.
By far. The hedge at the wall of the terrace is Lady of Shalott roses. And the color on these roses is absolutely gorgeous. It is peachy, orangey, pinky. It's everything I want in a rose color, and I absolutely adore it. This mass planting right here is, again, Walker's Low Catmint. On its second flush, you can imagine that first flush when the roses are in full bloom, the catmint's in full bloom, and it's perfect. Midnight Wine Shine Weigela brings that dark weight to this area. And to cap it off, we have Sprinter Boxwoods, which add that nice structure. As they grow, they'll become a solid hedge to contain the catmint. Come on up here, Christopher. We're going to go up on the terrace. Thunderbird Mongave.
I love that one. I think that's my favorite.
Yeah. Patio Peach. This is Bonfire Patio Peach. It does have peaches on it. Not as many as last year. I think the heat dome kind of did it in, and that's okay because they're not really that tasty when you eat them. So
gross.
They're hard to work with. Underneath, Super Vena Sparkling Amethyst, Super Tunia Mini Vista Indigo, Super Tunia Saffron Finch. I like this combination.
This is a really strong combo.
But the thing that stands out to me the most in this trio of containers is the Augusta Lavender Heliotrope. It just blooms its head off, and it reminds me a little bit of Verbena, which is why I think I like it so much.
Just a little paler lavender version.
And it always has bees on it. These are Moonglow African Daisies. They're an Osteospermum. They just flower power galore.
They haven't stopped.
More Super Tunia Mini Vista Indigo, Super Tunia Mini Vista Ultramarine, and these are Solenia begonias, which I do really, really like the fresh flower. Not a fan of the faded blooms so much. And I do find begonias do drop a lot.
Yeah, they can be a little on the messy side.
But it's still really, really nice. I like the texture. It's really pretty. In this container is a Moffat Blue Juniper. This is the second full season or third full season in this container? Second.
Second full season.
And I did prune it. It'll eventually go in the landscape. Where? Not sure. But for now, I'm happy with it here. It's underplanted with more of the Moonglow African Daisies, some Violet Night Alyssum, Super Tunia Saffron Finch, and Mini Vista Indigo in there. Some Verbena reseeded itself in here with this little treeling. This is a Marmot beech tree that I'd bought online. It was just like a little whip, and I'm growing it on until we have a place to put it in the landscape. Where that is,
no idea.
No idea, but it's being well taken care of here and has some little seedlings sharing its home. Over here is a Meyer lemon tree. There are 13 lemons on it. I'm really excited, and one of them, maybe even 2 of them, are starting to yellow up.
Yay!
That's really cool. These are our part sun containers. And it's a nice mix of purples, yellows, and greens. This Newly Noir Coleus really stands out to me, as does the Mini Me Chartreuse Coleus. This right here gets more shade. This gets more sun. I think it prefers shade, more double moon glow African daisies. In here is the aromagic heliotrope. I don't think this is enough sun for it to really thrive. It's just kind of filling in there, but I like the foliage texture. More of the yellow Selenia begonia. This is new for 2025, Tiara Blue Supertunia. Very interesting. I like it mixed with things. I think it brings a nice saturation and bright pop at the same time. Rockin' Deep Purple Salvia. Might not be sunny enough to get as many blooms, but it's still doing its job. What's doing very well in part shade even, right here, the Super Bells Double Chiffon and the Supertunia Mini Vista Indigo. I mean, I can't believe how little sun this spot gets and how well those flowers are doing. This final grouping of containers, this is Wisteria Colored Double Impatiens with the Pegasus Begonia planted in the center. This is the best these double impatiens have ever done for us.
By far.
And I have learned they do not love a lot of water.
Yeah, they just hang.
They just don't. And neither do the begonias, Boston Fern. This is Double Delight Apple Blossom Begonia, Double Delight Primrose Begonia. I love the colors on this so much. And this is large Summer Blue Wave Terenia. Is that what it is, Christopher?
Summer Wave Large Blue.
I got most of the words in there. What's interesting is we've been fertilizing this a lot in anticipation of the garden tour, and it kind of stopped blooming. So I wonder if it's one of those plants that the more you fertilize it, the less it blooms. I don't know.
It could be.
This right here is a ficus, right? Or fig?
It is a kind of ficus or fig. I think that is the same thing. I'm not 100%.
But this is a plant from Leaf Joy, this is Devindra Fern, right?
Living Lace Divana.
It's Divana.
It is Divana.
Why do I say Devindra? Divana Fern. More from Proven Winners over here. This is the Emerald Isle Elephant Ear.
That's
really
a great
cool
plant.
Yeah, I'm really happy with it. It's underplanted with some Super Bells. But what's funny is the elephant ear loves a lot of water. Super Bells do not. So the way that I cheat that is I keep the Super Bells in their little container.
He just tucks them in there. So they only get the water we give them.
Yeah, they only get the water that we give them. Meanwhile, we can water the heck out of the elephant ear. So that's a little like cheat tip for you. More of these Living Lace Divana ferns. Jungle Cat Alocasia. This has tripled in size since we put it here.
It's so cool.
This is a calathea of some kind, right?
It is Orbifolia. And there's a new leaf coming out. I'm very excited about it.
And this is, don't tell me, it is, no, tell me.
Think of a cheap beer.
That doesn't help me.
Amstel King.
Amstel King, but it's the same as, it's like the Klingon series.
It is a ficus.
Ficus, that's what it is. That's what I was going for. But not the cheap beer.
Amstel King, I think it's the funniest name.
Amstel King ficus, and it's supposed to, this is part of the Klingon series, so it doesn't lose its leaves. So these are all Leaf Joy plants right here. And then one last plant on the terrace I want to share with you before we wrap up part one of the tour. This is the Night Owl Mungave. Pretty cool in these little brown terracotta pots. So that's part one. Thank you so much for joining us on part one of our full July garden tour. Again, I'm Eric.
And I'm Christopher.
And we're Grow For Me Gardening.
Thanks for growing with us.